Dungeons & Dragons Dark Alliance is a co-op action brawler set in the popular D&D setting of Icewind Dale. It features 4 unique characters, each with their own distinct abilities and playstyles, hack-and-slash combat with fighting game style combos, some light RPG elements, and crossplay between PC and Xbox. It also happens to feature just so many negative reviews. But why is that? Well, jumping right into it, one major point is this game is really designed with controllers in mind. You can play with keyboard and mouse, but overall the PC port is bad. The game has a set camera rotation speed, meaning the camera doesn't follow your mouse movements with any real precision. Instead, if you move your mouse too fast, your camera barely moves. Couple this with weird keyboard controls, and the game just overall feels awkward and clunky to play without using a controller. Beyond this, in menus with sliders, you can't slide the slider with your mouse. You have to click the little arrow button and wait ages for the slider to finally move where you want it. But despite the bad PC port, if you use a controller like the devs recommend, is the combat any good? Personally, I would say yes. The combat is really fun with hack and slash style gameplay combined with a fighting game like combo system. It feels really weighty and impactful, which makes big strikes and cool combos feel incredibly satisfying to pull off. It can be a bit button mashy, especially starting out, but you'll quickly begin to unlock more of your moves and abilities, and once you do, combat picks up and becomes much more interesting, while also creating a lot more room for skilled gameplay in chaining different combos together while carefully managing your stamina consumption. However, sometimes it can feel a bit clunky, and in multiplayer, slight input lag can become a huge problem when you have to use specific timing to pull off certain moves and combos. The combat is also lacking in terms of enemy AI as well. There's a good variety of interesting enemy types, but none of them feel particularly intelligent in the AI department. This can result in situations where you can cheese fights by just spamming ranged attacks slightly out of the enemy's radius, at which point they just sit there and patiently await the sweet release of death. The combat definitely won't be for everyone with its rather arcadey feel, but personally I find the combat system to be really fun and engaging, especially in the mid to late game. So what about the map/world design? Well, the graphics look a bit dated, though this is somewhat made up for with interesting environments and art design. Don't get me wrong, it's not ugly by any means, but it's really nothing special either. The levels are pretty linear for the most part, but there's always little secrets and side paths that make the exploration feel really rewarding and fun. Sometimes this can result in some backtracking when you find where 2 paths connect. This can be really annoying, but I don't really mind it as much as it creates a cool moment of realization when it clicks that, oh, so that's how the map fits together. Speaking of things fitting together, how's the multiplayer? Well, as mentioned before, the game has up to 4-player co-op with each player taking on the role of one of the 4 main characters. The game also has this cool system where parrying an attack or performing certain class-specific moves triggers special team attacks for your friends to combo off of. In theory, this is an awesome feature, but I find that it tends to be really buggy and unreliable, making these attacks about as consistent as my upload schedule. Outside of this, the multiplayer is really fun, but it tends to be rather buggy and has some serious input lag that can really ruin the flow of combat, especially when trying to perform more difficult combos. There's also the issue of matchmaking, where the game doesn't match you with similar leveled characters very well. This results in a lot of games where the lower leveled players feel useless while higher leveled players just carry them through content. There's also a limited tether distance to the host of the session. In my time with the game, this didn't bother me too much, but some players may find this annoying, especially when respawning, as the host dying and respawning far away will pull everyone else out of combat. Despite these issues though, I find the multiplayer experience to be pretty fun with a couple friends, especially when facing more difficult content. Speaking of difficulty, if a challenge is what you're after, this game can certainly provide it. The game tends to be rather challenging in general, especially when playing solo. Adding to this challenge is that you have a limited supply of health potions that, similar to Dark Souls, can only be replenished upon reaching a camp and resting. These camps act as your respawn points as well. One feature I love about this is you're given a choice when you reach them to pass up on the checkpoint and resupply in exchange for greater loot rarity moving forward. This creates a really cool system of risk and reward, which always results in more interesting gameplay experiences. Speaking of risk and reward, I'm actually planning to make a full video dedicated to that topic in the near future, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. Back on the topic at hand though, my one big complaint about the difficulty is that sometimes it's rather inconsistent. You will have times where a mission is rather easy all the way up to the boss, then the boss will smash you into the ground harder than the Hulk meeting Loki for the first time.
Puny god.
So what about the story? Well, the story is fairly generic and it isn't really a big focus in this game. However, the characters do have a lot of charm, especially the villains, complete with funny voiceover lines and some great cutscenes. The voice acting itself is a bit hit or miss, but for the most part the dialogue makes up for it. As for the endgame, it's pretty typical fare for this kind of game. Each mission has 6 difficulty levels, and the endgame content is all around grinding these for better gear to then push into higher difficulties. For most players, this really won't offer much, and by the time you reach endgame, the rest of the game's content already feels so repetitive you're really not going to want to keep grinding it. So overall, despite the fun combat system and solid level design, I really can't recommend this game. If you're a fan of arcadey hack and slash games, the game does offer a decent bit. It has fun, engaging combat systems, a good challenge for more daring players, it has fun, charming dialogue, solid level design, and crossplay between PC and Xbox versions of the game. However, despite these strengths, the experience is totally ruined by a variety of issues, such as a terrible PC port, numerous bugs and glitches, especially in multiplayer, a lackluster endgame experience, a rather generic, mediocre storyline, and a really repetitive gameplay loop. So I would give this game a 4 out of 10. If you like this type of game, I'd say it's worth giving it a shot through Xbox Game Pass, but for the $40 price tag, I really can't recommend it. That's just my thoughts though, and I would love to hear what you think in the comments section down below. If you liked the video, remember to hit like. If you want to see more, subscribe, and remember,
your soul belongs to me now.
Hey boys, I caught one! I caught me a right plump dwarf, I did! Look at the size of him! That ain't no dwarf, dimwit!